Hello everyone, I'll go over a very exciting game played between Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura in the Altibox Norway chess tournament. After the first 3 rounds, both of them are sharing second place with a number of other players, and Magnus Carlsen is in clear first with 2.5 points out of 3. 1 point ahead of the field in clear first, which is an amazing achievement. Of course, there's a long way to go, but still, that's a big advantage. The tournament is played at 100 minutes for the first 40 moves, plus 15 minutes, plus 50 minutes for 20 moves after that, and with the 30-second increment starting from move 61. So it's a kind of a longer time control than the standard chess 90 plus 30. And another interesting thing about this tournament, which was supposed to make it more exciting than usual, is the Sophia rule, which implies that you can't talk, the players can't talk during the game. Now, you might think that's always a rule, but you are allowed to offer a draw. The Sophia rule says that you can't even offer a draw, so the only draw that could occur is by threefold repetition, the 50 move rule, and in other chess rulebook terms. So you can't offer a draw to your opponent. Despite that, we've had okay, so there have been 10 games in the first 2 rounds. There's only been 1 decisive result, so I guess that it's not that hard to agree to a draw without talking, but still I believe that the games have been exciting enough. This game was amazing, I would say, even though it did end in the draw, sorry for the spoiler, but I think that it's highly instructive for any Queen's Gambit declined player and for any d4 player as well. So, Wesley So had white pieces, so he wanted to attack definitely, and Hikaru Nakamura is of course known as a very aggressive player who is surely not going to decline a fight. Knight to f3, the reti opening, d5, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, we transpose to the Queen's Gambit declined. And now after e6, there's a couple way for white to play, and Wesley So goes for the most common line with knight to c3. After knight to c3, we have bishop to e7. This is still the 3 knights. Queen's Gambit declined. And now bishop to g5, which is not the most common move, but it's a good move. h6, bishop h4, castles. This is all, by the way, theory. I'm not going to go into too much detail because the video would take far too long. After e3, we have knight to e4, and this is now, after knight to e4, this is now the Lasker defense, and this is the start of the game, the starting position. And I think that this choice of opening for Hikaru Nakamura is very significant because this is often a tactical game, and it often, if you don't go for the main line theory, which Wesley So surely isn't going to go for, then the games can be highly tactical and very exciting. Of course, in this position, your bishop is hanging, it's attacked twice, and your pawn structure can be ruined if you allow knight takes c3, b takes c3. So the only move is bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, rook to c1 is played, this is the best move, and now c6, this is also probably the only move ever played, and this is where you get to choose in this position as white. Now, the main move in this position is bishop to d3. And if you play bishop to d3, you're going to enter the main line Lasker defense in the Queen's Gambit decline. So knight takes c3, rook takes c3, of course you're not taking with the b pawn, d takes c3, bishop takes c3, knight to d7, castles, b6. This is the starting position, and this is so common and so well known that I believe there isn't a single grandmaster that plays d4 that doesn't know this exact position and doesn't know how to play it and what the plans are. So after b6, white would play bishop d3, c5, bishop e4, taking the rook, rook b8, queen to c2. These are some common plans. But after c6, Wesley So didn't go for that, which I was extremely happy to see. Instead, he played, by the way, bishop to d3 was played about 500 times in Grandmaster games. What Wesley So played was only played about 4 or 5 times. And the second most common move is queen to c2, which is also okay. This has been played about 50 times. But Wesley So played g4, and g4 might seem absurd. It doesn't actually give away any of the opening advantage white has had. And it's very aggressive. So if you imagine moves such as h4, g5, then black is already in a lot of trouble. Secondly, this move doesn't give away where white is going to put his king. Now, from this position, white could still castle after h3, bishop e2 or bishop g2 and castle. Or he could go for a completely crazy setup with just pushing the pawns forward, putting the king on e2, bishop on g2 and trying to attack. So, g4 is replied to with rook to d8, which is the best move. Queen to c2, which is a slight inaccuracy. I believe that bishop to e2 was a better move. There were other moves as well. And here, I believe that instead of queen to c2, after rook to d8, he could have played rook to g1. And I think this is just more straightforward, and you are simply threatening g5, and there isn't an easy way to stop that. You could play g5 yourself, but then h4 and g5, so it could still happen. But after rook to d8, queen to c2, the plan is clear. It's simply to attack this pawn and take the pawn. And in this position, black can of course recapture the pawn, because there's always a possibility of playing queen to b4 check and grabbing the pawn on b2 if you give away your d5 pawn. And that's exactly what happened in the game. However, Hikaru Nakamura didn't get back the pawn that way. Now, you might wonder why doesn't Hikaru Nakamura simply take on c3 not to allow Wesley to capture the pawn. But after queen takes c3, dc4, bishop c4, the position is favorable for white. White's bishop is much better, white's knight is much more active, the queen is more active, the rook is better placed. White is going to castle, play h3 and have a comfortable position. Another move after queen to c2 was knight to g5, offering this trade. And now after knight takes g5, queen takes g5, bishop to e2, once again, white has a better position, and I believe that that's unjustified. Moving the knight is unjustified. It's much better to temporarily sacrifice the pawn. So after queen to c2, Hikaru Nakamura played knight to d7. And I think this is very instructive, because many weaker players, myself included, would never consider anything but saving the pawn, despite the fact that I see that I can play queen to b4 check and get back the b2 pawn, because I think trading the central pawn for the flank pawn isn't a favorable trade for me. But Hikaru Nakamura was correct, and this is actually the best move. So now we have knight takes c4, d takes c4, queen takes c4 going a pawn up, queen to b4 check, king to e2 is the best move and the only move. And now of course you could play queen takes b2, getting back the pawn, rook c2, queen b6, rook g1, and here black stands slightly better, about 0.2, minus 0.2. But after king to e2, Hikaru Nakamura didn't go for the pawn. He played a much more active move. He played e5. Of course, engine-wise, this is unjustified because the engines still like material. And if you can grab a pawn with check, why not? I think many people, once again, including myself, could never resist that. But e5 is very active and very tricky. To e5, Wesley So reacts with queen to c2, simply saving the pawn, solidifying the position, removing the queen from the glare of the rook, possibly if Nakamura plays rook to e8. And now we have e d4, knight d4, knight to e5, attacking the c4 pawn. Of course, it's still defended twice, but that could become a problem, and also attacking the g4 pawn. So h3, saving g4, c5, dislodging the knight, knight to f5, and now bishop f5, gf5, doubling the pawns on the f-file. Now already, it's not that clear that white is a pawn up, because the pressure is mounting on his position, and a single mistake or simply allowing black to double rooks on the d-file could mean the end, because all of the pieces are menacingly staring at the white king, which is quite unsafe. Now b5 is played, challenging the c4 pawn. Queen c3 offering a trade, because if you can relieve pressure from your position, you should. Because this is starting to look scary, especially with Hikaru Nakamura sitting opposite of you. Knight c4, queen takes b4, c takes b4, and b3 dislodging the knight. And after knight to b6, unfortunately, from a very exciting position after g4 and a lot of possibilities for both sides, and Wesley So being a pawn up and having great chances, and that doesn't mean that Nakamura was losing, but both sides had a chance to win. This is now a draw, and I just don't see a way for either side to lose this. The evaluation, if you ask the engines, is about plus 0.3 or minus 0.3 depending on what both sides do, and this is just move 22, and that's very unfortunate that Wesley So probably was afraid that Nakamura would get too much activity, but if instead of queen to c3 he played something more active, then he could have gotten in trouble, because b5 is actually opening up the b file, and after rook to b8 this is a problem, and everything starts to be a problem. So queen to c3 is objectively the best move, but not the best for the spectators and Wesley So fans. So queen to c3, knight c3, queen b4, c b4, b3, knight b6. Now this is simply just you have to know how to finish this game technically, and of course because of the Sofia rule they were not allowed to agree to a draw, so they played it out. e4, rook a c8, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, king to d2. Once again, there isn't really that much in the position. Of course, king to d2 is king to d2 is threatening to take on b5, so now a6, bishop d3, king f8, f4, f6. Now just both sides are going to improve their position after the king trade, the rook trade, and the only thing you have to look out for is not to allow your opponent's king to enter the position. Of course, the black king can, both kings can only enter via the d4 square, so you have to guard d4, which is arguably much easier for black to do, because he has the knight that can control both color complexes, and white only has the light squared bishop, and of course these pawns are covering c4, so d4 is the only problem, and black could theoretically put the knight on the c6 square, control d4, but then after the king moves this becomes a problem, and the pawn setup, the pawn configuration on the king side doesn't allow that, so there isn't even a theoretical chance for either side to win this, I believe. So knight c8, a bit of maneuvering, and since there really isn't anything either side could do, after a bit of maneuvering here they found a threefold repetition and agreed to a draw. And I have to say that was very unfortunate, and I was looking forward for Wesley to win the game and get in the contention for first place, or for Hikaru Nakamura to finally get a positive result in any event, because I've been following his chess for a while, and I think his confidence has dropped significantly in the last year, and I believe he needs some strong results to get back on the top. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked this exciting draw between Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura, and stay tuned for more chess. Thanks very much. Bye.